Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show on this Friday, the 27th of May, 2022. Thank you for tuning in. I'm glad to have you guys here. So we're going to get started right away, and we're going to start the charts right here. Take a look at what's going on. China has got a feud is between the supreme leader, Xi, and Li. Is it Li? Li? Over the COVID response. Well, they've had this zero COVID policy in China, and it's been really affecting their economy in a negative way because basically, people are zero tolerance to COVID. What they're doing is they're locking them down, and so they can't go to work if they're locked down. So it says in the past several months there have been rumors that a quiet feud has been erupting within Beijing's top echelons. The result is a disagreement within the Communist Party whether Xi's zero COVID policy was the proper solution for the country 1.4 billion, in which 2.5 years ago unleashed the coronavirus plague on the world. Now it's official because, as Bloomberg reported this morning, China finds itself gripped by discord at the very top level, with President Xi and Premier Li on opposing sides of the zero COVID ring. It says, in a rare video call with thousands of Chinese officials across the nation to warn of an even worse economic crisis than 2 years ago and calling on them to better balance COVID controls and economic growth, those same government officials charged with implementing policy at the ground level found themselves stumped and unsure whether they should still listen to Supreme Leader Xi, who continues to emphasize the need for officials to push the zero COVID-19 cases, or Li, who continuously urges them to bolster the economy and hit preordained growth targets. This apparent dilemma has led to paralysis within the nation, normally hailed for speedy implementation of orders from above, Bloomberg reported, citing 8 unnamed senior local government officials. Okay, so I guess they're a little bit divided over what to do right now over there. I'm going to tell you, to have zero COVID, the original form of COVID was not as contagious as the Omicron. I think what they're dealing with is the Omicron subvariants of Omicron, which is contagious in the extreme. And according to different experts in the field, they've basically said that everyone on Earth is going to be exposed at one point or another to the Omicron subvariants because they're so contagious. Absolute, contagious in the absolute, about as bad as it gets for a respiratory virus, as far as contagion is concerned, is what we're dealing with Omicron and the Omicron subvariants. Ultimately contagious, and so it's spotty. They got it in China, and it's spotty though. It's like not everybody's got it, but there's enough people have it in China where it keeps spreading it to the people who haven't had it. And so they're mixed on this opinion, which way they should turn in this. And of course, it's really costing their economy. Let's move on. Let's talk about something else here. The Royal Navy is to send warships to the Black Sea and break grain blockade as an urgent solution. The Royal Navy could send warships to the Black Sea in order to protect freighters carrying Ukrainian grain, according to reports. Now here's the thing about this, guys. That area of the Black Sea right now is just full of Russian ships. Just full of Russian ships. Okay? And the Royal Navy is going to send their warships right in next to the Russian ships on a mission in there. We're in a Cold War scenario right now. Worse than the Cold War. It's actually war. It's actually war going on. in that region, right? And if you're going to send Royal Navy ships in the same waters as Russian ships, uh, isn't there a possibility there of a accident happening where somebody makes a little miscalculation? I mean, the ships are floating around in the water there. There's such a thing called drift, even. Where if a ship stops its engine, it starts to drift. And water's not like land. If you put something in a position in the land, it stays there. Like if you park a tank behind a tree, you come back next morning, the tank's still behind the tree. On the water, things drift and move around and everything else. And if you get ships in close proximity to one another that basically are on opposite sides of a war, in war territory, and they're floating around in the ocean in there, an accident can happen. All it takes is one shot to be fired. And the next thing you know, Russians are shooting at British and the British are shooting at the Russians. And what would that mean? Well, it's for you guys to decide, but I think it would be called World War III. And so, I mean, if an accident were to happen here with this, it says Ukraine's allies are keen to establish a coalition of the willing to break the Russian blockade. Yeah, well, I mean, it's a very important to world hunger and everything else, but at the same time, do you think of the ramifications of this, of having Russian warships floating around in the same area as British warships in that close proximity? Myself, I think that would create a very dangerous situation. It's something similar to the no-fly zone that they wanted to establish a few months back. A couple months ago, they wanted to establish a no-fly zone over Ukraine with Russian warplanes flying over Ukraine, and they're going to send well, maybe not American, but they're going to send up fighter jets from the coalition fighter jets of the West over Ukraine to establish a no-fly zone, and with Russian warplanes in that area. I mean, it's the same kind of situation happening again here with these ships going into the Black Sea, these British warships in territory that's just dug full of Russian warships. So, I mean, we've been averting World War III breaking out. And there's sort of been a proxy war going on, between the West and the East. It's kind of like the West has been providing the really high-tech armament to Ukraine, and Ukraine has been fighting Russians with that high-tech armament, and the Russians have been taking quite heavy losses on an awful lot of their equipment because of the high-tech armament the West has been providing Ukraine. And so that's part of it, but it hasn't really escalated into World War III as such. Anyway, just wanted to talk about that development. Let's take a look now at the silver price today, which is at 14 cents up at 22.14. Silver and gold has been doing very well in this deflationary event. I'll call it a deflationary event because it is deflationary. Even though we have inflation, this is deflationary to the upper part of the financial system. And I told you guys last week, I said, hey, listen, the market's going to stabilize now. Well, now they're stabilized. The markets have stabilized, and I told you they were. I called it right to the day, practically, that the markets would stabilize. Now, the markets, I don't see them going up significantly yet. No. What they're going to do is the markets are going to continue to drift along. They might go up a little bit, might bounce back a little bit between now and the next hike, Fed hike. They're going to hike probably 50 basis points. When they do that, the market's going to price that in. And we're going to see the markets tip down again. Okay? That's going to continue with the next one after that as well from the Fed. And if they do quantitative tightening, the market's going to price that in as well. But we see the light at the end of the tunnel now, which we didn't a week ago. The Fed has blinked, and the Fed is basically giving us an idea now when they're going to pivot and change direction on all this and go back to a more accommodative monetary policy. They've given us that signal now. The market might start front running that signal a little bit early if they anticipate it. That's the thing. So what we're looking at is a bit more downward pressure because there's a couple more rate hikes coming and possibly quantitative tightening. I don't think they're going to get away with that very long if they try it on, the Fed. But anyway, so we're probably going to see the markets drifting along a little bit. And then what's going to happen is then they'll start to front run before the Fed even quits their tightening schedule. And then we're looking at a market that's going to go back to a risk-on bull market again. Risk on, people will be buying the dip again. And that's what's coming this fall. So we're going to go through these summer doldrums where we're fighting a headwind with the markets. And also fighting a headwind with gold and silver and with cryptos and everything. Fighting a headwind. And then what's going to happen is then we're going to have the wind to our back come this fall, I believe. But that's going to lead us in toward the hyperinflation. That's when we're really going to start to earnestly see that the Fed doesn't have the tools to fight this inflation. They can't. It'll be proven that there's no faith left in the Fed anymore. And then we're going to see some really big, profound inflation coming in, probably this winter, you know. And so it's taken a long time to get here. I've been forecasting hyperinflation for years, but it's a process, an up and down process until we actually get into the hyperinflation. So we're looking at 15 cents up for silver today. Let's check out gold. And gold is up $4.80. Take a look at cryptocurrency today, which hasn't been doing so well lately. We're looking at 29,169 for Bitcoin. Let's take a look now at the Dow Jones and see. It's up 253. No, 239 today at 32,876. And now let's take a look at oil. Oil's 114. It's up 21 cents. The MOVE index today, we're looking at 102.49. Now the MOVE index has been going down lately, and it's actually broke down below lines of support. Well, there is no lines of support for this, but it has broken down below the what I would call the moving average, which has been seeing it go up over the past year, and it's at 102.49 right now. And we're going to take a look at bonds and rates, and we're seeing falling yields today. U.S. 10 years at 2.72 and the U.S. 30 years at 2.95. And yields have fallen about 3.8 basis points on the 10 year and 4 basis points on the 30 year. And now let's take a look at the U.S. dollar index at 101.61. I see this as a very dangerous situation if the United Kingdom does send warships into the Black Sea and they're in close proximity with Russian ships. I see that as a very dangerous scenario for a massive escalation. In fact, it could be an explosive escalation and all-out war. If something bad happens, like, if these ships start firing on one another. And what could set them off? Just getting too close to one another, for one thing, I suppose. I just see it as a very dangerous situation. This whole thing's been very dangerous situations. One of the scenarios that were on the list. There's a short list of scenarios that could trigger World War III, and one of them was Russia invading Ukraine. It was one of the scenarios that were on the list of a short list of scenarios that could trigger an all-out nuclear exchange. So, I mean, that's what we're talking about here. Uh, so it's very dangerous because Russia holds the most nuclear weapons of any country on Earth, with over 6,000 thermonuclear weapons, which is a tremendous number. Why they need so many, I don't know. And then the United States is second. Almost got as many as Russia does. Thermonuclear weapons. But between the two of them, they got enough thermonuclear weapons to completely obliterate the planet. And of course, then, if the planet becomes obliterated somewhat, to the point where people are in chaos, how are they going to cool those 400 and something, I think it's 450 thermonuclear reactors, well, nuclear reactors, that are scattered all over the globe, here, there, and everywhere? How are the people going to get to work to service them and keep them reactor cores cool? If there's a nuclear attack, and an EMP, and all that kind of stuff that will come with nuclear attacks. How do those guys get to work, the nuclear technicians that service these reactors? And what happens then? What if we get multiple meltdowns in multiple different countries? Maybe you could have as many as, say, 30 or 40 meltdowns in just one country, and then the next country next to you has got 30 or 40 or 50 meltdowns. And you got all these meltdowns going on, doing what's called the China syndrome, where they burn down into the earth and they spew radioactivity up into the upper atmosphere that floats around the earth, for irradiating the soil and plant life and everything else for decades. Even these people that have underground bases, what kind of a world would it be if you had like 200 Chernobyls going off? And the surface is so radiated that you can't stay up on the surface for more than 5 minutes without getting a deadly dose of radiation. Those people in those underground facilities, they would just have to lock the doors, and they would have to stay in there forever, or until their food and water and air runs out. Have they thought this through really well? I know some of these bigger underground systems, they got probably enough food to last 5 or 10 years, but that's in perfect scenario. That's, what happens if it really happens? And the first thing you know, everything goes wrong. They find out, some of our food got wet. Oh, sorry, we don't have enough to last 5 years anymore. Now we only got 6 months worth. Or some of our food got wet and got ruined, or whatever. Something happened, or the air filtration system leading up to the surface is plugged, or whatever, or the engine quit that runs the generator, or whatever. Just one thing after another can go wrong, and they're in those underground facilities, and they ain't going to be able to fix it. And where are they going to get how are they going to go up to the surface then, if the world is like highly radioactive for the next 10,000 year half-life? Have they thought these things through? Some of these bigwigs out there, they think, we'll light the world on fire, and we'll just go down into our underground, Have they thought it through, what it would really be like to have to be stuck down there forever? And what's the point of that anyway? You can't go up and breathe the fresh air anymore without... You have to have a watch on. Say, well, I've had my 5 minutes for this year. That's my dose of radiation for this year. Maybe next year I can go up on the surface for 5 minutes again. Is that what they want? It's about time for them to sit down and say to themselves, hey, you know what we should do? Maybe we should have world peace. And forget about this foolishness that we've carried with us from ancient times, when kings used to war against one another. Maybe we can quit this foolishness now. And maybe we can all start working together. And maybe we can start actually having something called free trade, but really free trade, where we don't have tariffs or anything else. We can just start trading between countries, and we can have a new currency. Maybe we need a new currency that is fair and equitable, not just a bunch of paper we've run off a printing press. Maybe we can have a new currency, like maybe gold, for instance. Maybe that would be a good idea, use gold as a currency, and that way it's all fair and equitable, and nobody can manipulate the price of the currency anymore. And real free trade, no tariffs or anything, and start to work together in the world and share technologies and stuff and improve the planet rather than tearing the planet to pieces for a change, Because we got a lot of other problems in the world. If people haven't noticed, we all breathe the same air. We all drink the same water here on this world. Water pollution, terrible. The chemicals that they're dumping into the water systems, and stuff like that. The whole thing needs fixing. And the biggest thing that needs fixing probably is the money itself. Need to go back to money that's real money. I can't think of a better solution out there than real, honest to goodness gold. And you know what they could do if they wanted to, these countries? They could actually take the gold and they could turn it into a bill form where there's a little bit of meltable gold inside the polymer bills that you use. And they could make it such a micro amount. That would give the currency a value because you could melt the currency, basically burn the polymer away, and there'd be a little tiny drop of gold. Just a speck. But if you had like 1,000 bills, and you melted them down, you'd have like a whole ounce of gold. And more than that, actually. Make it so that it'd probably take 10,000 bills, And those bills would be real gold inside there. And that way you can't counterfeit them either. Because you can see the gold in there in a microfilm. It's a perfect solution to all of the world's economic problems because you can't swindle, you can't cheat, you can't lie about it and everything else, and you can't make fugazi, you can't make currency from nothing anymore, and give it to all your buddies, make them all rich and everybody else poor. Anyway. I'm just ranting and raving a little bit here because I'm sick of what's going on. Oh, they're marching us toward a world war, a third world war, which could be very well nuclear. And I don't want to see that, and everybody else should be concerned about that as well. It's time for reconciliation, time for peace to come. That's what we need. We don't need wars anymore. We should have moved past that ages ago. Humanity should have moved past war ages ago. Shouldn't even had the Second World War. We should have already been on the path toward world peace back then. And I mean, this is just stupid to carry it on, become this highly technologically advanced and still be waging war. That stupidity in itself is beyond measure. Because what we're risking is annihilation. Anyway, we'll catch you guys in the next show. Remember, hit the notification icon and click all on it so that you get all the notifications. We'll catch you guys later. Bye-bye.